It began on a cold and restless night beneath a sky full of trembling stars, the kind of night where even silence seemed to hold its breath. The storm had rolled in faster than forecasted, wind howling through the mountain pass, rain slamming against the earth like it wanted to wake the dead. Inside a worn-out expedition tent, a lone human researcher named Dr. Elias Ward sat beside a humming data pad, recording atmospheric readings on a world few dared to visit. The planet was known as Nerith, 4, a barren world long abandoned by the Galactic Council, declared lifeless centuries ago after drought turned its oceans to salt and its skies to dust. But tonight there was rain, and that was impossible. Elias stared at the monitor, disbelief tightening in his chest as droplets fell heavier, louder, faster. That was when he heard it, a knock. Slow, deliberate, human. No one should have been there. When he unzipped the flap, lightning flashed, and there she was. A woman stood before him, soaked to the bone, her silver hair clinging to her cheeks, her eyes glowing faintly blue beneath the stormlight. She didn't shiver. She didn't blink. She only whispered, "Rain doesn't exist where I'm from." And then, the thunder swallowed her voice. He let her in without a word, part disbelief, part instinct. The tent smelled of wet air and ozone, the storm raging like a living thing outside. She sat quietly near the lantern, her gaze fixed on the flame as if she'd never seen fire before. Elias studied her, heart racing. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, not in reflection, but as if something beneath it moved. "You're human?" he asked. She smiled faintly, though it wasn't an answer. "I was once," she said softly. Before the sky forgot how to cry. He didn't understand, but something about her words carried the weight of centuries. When she reached out to touch the flame, the air pulsed around her, bending light itself for a brief instant. Elias stepped back. "You shouldn't be here," she said suddenly, turning toward him. "The Council doesn't want anyone near this world. They erased it from the archives for a reason." Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed fear. "Why?" he asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "Because Nerith, for remembers." As the storm raged outside, she told him what the galaxy had forgotten. Long before the Galactic Council had united the stars, before alien races learned to shape gravity and light, there was a world called Nerith, a world where humanity first made contact with something older than time. It wasn't a species, she said, but a consciousness, a vast, sleeping entity that had once stretched its will across the void. When the early colonists tried to harness it, they didn't realize what they were awakening. The Council sealed the planet, drained its atmosphere, and erased all records, she whispered. They called it mercy. Her voice faltered then, softer than the rain outside. But something survived. It speaks to those who listen. Elias stared at her, unsure if she was mad or if he was dreaming. "And you?" he asked quietly. "Did it speak to you?" She met his gaze with eyes that glowed like starlight breaking through fog. "It made me," she said simply. "I am what remains of what they tried to destroy." The rain slowed to a whisper. Elias sat in stunned silence, the hum of his data pad the only sound between them. Every instinct told him to leave, to record his findings and call for evacuation. But he couldn't look away. She seemed fragile, human in shape but cosmic in presence, like someone caught between being and memory. "Why are you here?" he asked at last. She turned toward the flap of the tent, her expression unreadable. "Because it's waking again," she said. "And when it does, the galaxy will remember what it buried." Lightning split the sky, and for a brief second, Elias saw something outside. A shadow stretching across the plains, immense and shifting like a mountain moving beneath the clouds. The ground trembled. The rain turned to steam. She rose slowly, her hand brushing his arm, leaving a faint electric warmth behind. "If you stay," she said, "you'll understand. But understanding has a price." By dawn, the storm was gone. The sky over Nerith, for had turned a strange, living gray, the horizon rippling like liquid metal. Elias followed her out of the tent, his boots sinking into the wet soil that shouldn't exist. The world around him was alive, the ground pulsing faintly, the air charged with something vast and unseen. "It's breathing," she murmured, kneeling and placing her palm against the earth. The moment her hand touched it, the clouds above twisted into spirals, and a low hum filled the air, resonating through his chest. "It's been asleep for 1,000 years, she said. "But it never forgot humanity. You woke it when you came." Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "Why me?" he whispered. She smiled sadly. "Because humans always return to what they fear most." Then she stepped closer, her hand brushing his face. "You still think the galaxy belongs to the Council. But this," she gestured to the sky, "this belongs to what came before." As the light intensified, images filled Elias's mind. Cities of glass, oceans of stars, ships breaking apart as they touched forbidden skies. He saw humanity's first expansion, the wars, the betrayals, the silence that followed. And then he saw her, Alara, standing before the Council, warning them, pleading with them to stop. She wasn't just a creation of the entity. She had been one of them, human, before she became something else. When the vision faded, he was on his knees, trembling. She looked at him with both sorrow and pride. "Now you know," she said softly. "Now you understand why they feared us." Above them, the sky cracked open, revealing not light, but something deeper, patterns of energy spiraling like neural veins across the heavens. The consciousness beneath the planet was awake, aware, reaching out. And through it, Elias could feel every heartbeat of humanity echoing across the stars. The Galactic Council ships arrived hours later, their silver hulls slicing through the clouds. They came not to rescue but to erase, just as they had done before. Through the comms, Elias heard the orders. Sterilize the surface, neutralize all organic anomalies, leave nothing standing. But Alara stepped forward, her form glowing brighter than the rising sun. "They will not silence us again," she said, her voice resonating through the storm. The earth beneath her erupted in light, tendrils of energy surging upward, wrapping around the descending ships like vines of fire. The Council fleet fired, but their weapons dissolved midair, their energy absorbed into the awakening force. Elias stood frozen, caught between awe and terror. "What are you doing?" he shouted. She turned to him, her voice breaking with emotion. "Giving them back what they tried to take, the truth of what humanity is." When the storm of light finally faded, the Council fleet was gone. In its place hung silence, vast, humbling, eternal. The planet glowed faintly beneath a new dawn, the air filled with a warmth that felt almost sacred. Alara stood a few steps away, her form flickering like smoke. "You can leave now," she said softly. "The galaxy will come for answers, and you'll be the one to give them." He shook his head, stepping closer. "What about you?" Her eyes dimmed. "I am part of this world now. My story ends where it began." As she turned to walk toward the rising sun, her body dissolved into motes of light that scattered across the plains like falling stars. Elias stood there for hours, rain beginning to fall once more, each drop carrying the echo of her voice. "Rain doesn't exist where I'm from." Years later, historians would speak of Nerith, for as the first awakened world, the moment when humanity rediscovered its place among forces older than empires. The Galactic Council would call it an anomaly. But those who knew Elias's story, the man who heard the rain, would whisper a different truth. That humanity had never been lost. It had simply been waiting, asleep beneath the dust, dreaming of thunder. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic HFY sci-fi tales that remind us why humanity will always stand apart in the galaxy. The rain didn't stop for hours, and in that endless cascade of water, Elias felt as if time itself had come undone. The stranger, this woman with eyes like frozen lightning, sat quietly near the lantern, steam rising faintly from her clothes as the heat met her alien skin. He watched her, unsure whether she was real or some illusion born from exhaustion. The storm outside drummed like a heartbeat, steady and relentless. She looked toward the canvas ceiling of the tent, as though mesmerized by the sound. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Her voice was melodic, touched with something ancient, like someone hearing music for the first time. Elias said nothing at first. He was too caught in the surreal weight of the moment. He had spent 6 months alone on Nerith, for studying wind patterns and soil decay, never expecting company, let alone this. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. "Who are you?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she lifted her hand, letting droplets fall from her fingertips into the lantern's flame. The drops hissed softly, glowing blue for an instant before vanishing. "Where I come from," she said at last. "The sky hasn't wept in generations. The air is dry, the ground cracks beneath our feet, and we've forgotten what water smells like. We look up at empty skies and pray to myths that no longer listen." Her words hung between them, heavy as the rain. Elias leaned forward, studying her face, the faint shimmer under her skin that seemed to catch and bend the light. "You said you're not from here," he said. "Not from Nerith?" She smiled faintly. "Not from your kind of here," she replied. "My world lies beyond the Council's maps, beyond their memory. We once called it Saloon. Now it's just a shell." Elias frowned, his heart beginning to race. Saloon was a name he knew only from legend, an uncharted colony that vanished centuries ago during humanity's early expansion into deep space. The Galactic Council had declared it destroyed after its last transmission ended mid-sentence. Yet here she was speaking of it like a ghost from myth. "That's impossible," he said quietly. "Saloon's gone." She turned toward him, eyes glimmering beneath the lantern's flicker. "So is rain," she whispered. "And yet here I am." He stared at her, unsure whether to fear her or believe her. The tent walls trembled under another gust of wind, the thunder rolling like a slow growl across the mountains. She didn't flinch. Instead, she closed her eyes, tilting her head slightly as if listening to something beyond his hearing. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. "The pulse beneath the ground?" Elias hesitated. He thought it was the storm at first, but now that she said it, he could feel it. A faint vibration, deep and steady, like the planet itself was breathing. "What is it?" he asked. She opened her eyes, and for the first time, he saw something behind them, an ocean of blue fire, swirling like galaxies. "It's old," she said almost reverently. "Older than the Council. Older than the first human colony. It remembers everything." Her tone changed then, a flicker of sorrow weaving into her words. "We built our cities on its bones. We drank from its veins. And when it screamed, we pretended not to hear." Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Who's we?" he asked. She looked away. "My people. And yours." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain softened, turning into a steady whisper against the tent. Elias finally broke the silence. "You talk like you were there," he said, trying to sound calm. She gave a quiet laugh, one that carried both warmth and ache. "In a way I was," she said. "The entity beneath this world, it doesn't die. It sleeps. It dreams through those who listen. I listened too long." Elias didn't know what to say. The words entity and dreams felt like fragments of a myth told to scare children, not something a scientist could measure. "So what are you?" he asked. Her gaze turned toward him, piercing yet soft. "I'm what remains of what your kind tried to erase," she said. "A piece of what was once human, and something far older." She reached for the small data pad near his hand, her fingers brushing his lightly. The device flickered, its screens shifting through readings faster than he'd ever seen. She watched the numbers scroll like rain down a window. "Your instruments are listening too," she whispered. "They can feel the change." He stared at her in disbelief. "You're manipulating it." She shook her head slowly. "No, Elias. It's responding." The ground shuddered then, just enough to make the lantern sway. He looked around, half expecting the tent to collapse. But she remained still, calm, her eyes glowing brighter. "What's happening?" he demanded. She looked toward the storm beyond the tent flap. "It's remembering," she said. You've awakened the world's oldest wound. The words sent a chill through him, but before he could respond, she suddenly winced, clutching her side. Her glow dimmed. Elias moved forward, instinct overriding fear. You're hurt, he said, reaching for the medkit beside his cot. She tried to stop him, but exhaustion overtook her. As he wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders, he noticed something strange. The blood on her skin shimmered silver, vanishing as it touched the air. She looked up at him weakly. You shouldn't have come here, she whispered. The council doesn't forgive curiosity. He froze. You're with them. Her eyes flicked open again, wide with pain and something deeper, fear. No, she said. I'm what they feared most. The thunder cracked again, louder this time, and for a moment Elias thought he heard something beneath it. A low, mechanical hum. She heard it too. Her hand tightened around his wrist. They're coming, she said urgently. You have to hide the recordings. He frowned. Who's coming? Her eyes glowed brighter again, the stormlight reflecting in their depths like 1,000 dying suns. The ones who erased us, she whispered. The council doesn't want this world to exist. It remembers too much about humanity. Outside, the rain began to change, turning to streaks of silver light instead of water, cutting through the darkness like liquid stars. Elias stared in awe, torn between fear and fascination. The storm was no longer a storm, it was something alive. The sound of engines roared in the distance, faint but closing fast. We don't have much time, she said, her voice breaking. If they find me, they'll destroy everything, even you. Elias met her gaze, heart pounding. Then tell me what this place really is, he said. Tell me the truth before they arrive. She looked at him, her expression softening. You wouldn't believe it, she whispered. But I'll show you. She reached out and pressed her palm against his chest. For an instant the world vanished. The tent, the rain, the mountains, all dissolved into light. He saw memories that weren't his. Towering cities carved into stone, oceans evaporating beneath alien suns, humanity's ancestors building machines that reached into the stars. And beneath it all, the voice of something vast, an ancient consciousness humming like a song that had no end. When the vision faded, Elias gasped for air, falling to his knees. She looked down at him with sorrow. Now you see why they fear it, she said softly. Because what sleeps beneath this world is not a monster. It's a memory of who you once were. He stared at her in silence, drenched in sweat, his mind reeling from what he had seen. The hum outside grew louder now, closer. She looked toward the sky and whispered, They're here. And before Elias could ask another word, the tent walls glowed white as a ship's spotlight tore through the storm, casting their shadows against the rain. The roar outside grew into a low, trembling vibration that made the ground itself quiver beneath Elias's knees. The stormlight flashed against the tent walls like the pulse of an angry god, each flicker brighter than the last. Alara rose slowly, her silhouette outlined in silver fire, her eyes fixed toward the sound beyond the canvas. They've found me, she whispered. Elias could barely hear her over the thunder and the rising hum of engines descending from the sky. He unzipped the tent flap just enough to see out, and what he saw turned his breath to ice. Through the curtains of rain, several aircraft hovered above the valley, sleek, metallic, and silent, the kind used by the Galactic Council's enforcement corps. Their undersides glowed with shifting blue light, cutting through the storm as if it were smoke. You brought them here? Elias demanded. No, Alara said quietly, her voice trembling with regret. They've been watching you since the moment you landed on Nerith, for they knew the readings would bring you close to the truth. She looked back at him, her expression haunted. But they didn't expect me to find you first. Elias stepped closer, struggling to make sense of her words. Who are they? He asked. Council ships? Why would the Galactic Council care about some old world's weather anomaly? She hesitated, her gaze flickering toward the light spilling through the tent. Because this planet isn't dead, Elias, she said. It's remembering. and they don't want anyone to hear what it remembers. He wanted to ask more, but a beam of light swept across the hillside, followed by the heavy thud of landing gear. The sound of boots echoed through the rain. Alara turned to him sharply. "We have to move. Now." She reached for his wrist, her touch cold and electric. The tent flaps burst open just as they ducked out, the storm soaking them instantly. Elias barely had time to grab his pack before she dragged him down the slope toward the ravine. Behind them, voices shouted over the roar of the wind, mechanical and precise. He could see shapes in the rain, armored figures, their visors glowing blue, their movements perfectly synchronized. Council enforcement, the galaxy's most feared enforcers, trained not to question orders, only to erase evidence. They slid down the muddy embankment, water splashing up to their knees. Alara led him through the dark, her body moving with inhuman grace. "You said they were watching me?" Elias shouted over the thunder. "Why? I'm just a researcher." She didn't answer immediately, her breath coming fast as she glanced over her shoulder. "Because you weren't supposed to find this place," she finally said. "No one was. The Council buried it after the first war between humanity and the alien coalitions. They said it was uninhabitable, but that was a lie. They were hiding what's beneath it." Elias frowned, ducking under a ridge of rock as they reached a small cave, its entrance obscured by overgrown vines. "You keep saying it's alive," he said. "That the planet remembers. What does that mean?" Alara turned toward him, her face illuminated by flashes of lightning. "It means this world isn't just soil and stone. It's a mind, Elias. A living archive of everything humanity once was, before the Council silenced it." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from something like grief. "When the wars ended, they erased the old worlds, burned the archives, erased the names, made sure no one remembered how strong your kind used to be. But this world refused to forget. And now it's calling you back." Elias's heart pounded as he processed her words. It sounded impossible, yet the evidence was all around him. The rain where there shouldn't be rain, the hum beneath the soil, the visions he had seen when she touched him. "Why me?" he asked. "Why not someone else?" She looked at him for a long moment, rain dripping from her hair. "Because you listen," she said softly. "You came here not to conquer, but to understand. That's what it needs. Someone who still remembers what it means to be human." He didn't know how to respond. Outside, the sound of footsteps grew louder. The soldiers had reached the ridge. Their lights swept across the valley, and through the mist, Elias saw one of the figures kneel, scanning the ground. A voice crackled over their comms. "Thermal readings, 2 life forms moving west. Target confirmed." The hum of the ships intensified. Alara's eyes flashed. "They've locked onto us," she whispered. Without another word, she reached out and pressed her hand against the cave wall. The stone rippled like liquid, opening into a dark passage. Elias stumbled back in shock. "How?" She pulled him inside. "No questions. Just move." The tunnel was narrow and wet, the walls glowing faintly with veins of blue light. The sound of the rain faded behind them, replaced by the rhythmic pulse Elias had felt earlier, the heartbeat of the planet itself. It grew stronger with every step, until it seemed to sync with his own pulse. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice low. "To its core," she said. "It's the only place they can't reach. The planet protects its own." Her words sounded like myth, but as they moved deeper, the passage widened into a cavern that took his breath away. The ceiling arched high above, covered in bioluminescent patterns that shimmered like constellations. In the center of the chamber stood a massive structure, a pillar of crystal and metal, pulsing with the same rhythm as the ground. Elias approached it slowly, drawn to its glow. "What is this?" he asked. Alara's voice was hushed, reverent. "It's a memory vault," she said. "The first humans who landed here built it to speak to the entity beneath the planet. They tried to merge consciousness with the world, to preserve knowledge beyond death. But something went wrong. The Council called it corruption. I call it evolution." He reached out, and the surface rippled beneath his hand like warm water. Suddenly, visions flooded his mind again. He saw humanity's rise through the stars, their first contact with alien civilizations, the Council's formation, and the slow erosion of human power as fear replaced unity. He saw the Council erase entire worlds to hide what they didn't understand. And he saw her, Alara, standing before them, warning them of the cost. "You fought them," he said, breathless. She nodded. "I tried to save what they were destroying. They called it rebellion. They called me a monster." Her expression hardened. "They killed my world, Elias. They burned the skies to silence the truth. I survived because the entity chose me, to carry its voice." He stared at her, realization dawning like dawn breaking over the horizon. "You're not human anymore," he whispered. "Not entirely," she agreed. "But I remember enough to know what we've lost." Before he could respond, the ground shook violently. The cave walls trembled, and from above came the distant whine of weapons charging. "They've found us," Alara said, her eyes flaring with light. She pressed her hand to the crystal pillar, and the entire chamber pulsed in response. The hum became a roar, deep and ancient, resonating through Elias's bones. Outside, the Council's ships fired. Energy blasts tore through the valley, shaking the mountain, but the cavern held firm, its light intensifying with every strike. "They won't stop," Elias shouted. "They'll destroy the planet if they have to." Alara turned toward him, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Then let them try," she said. "Because for every world they bury, another will rise to remember." Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Elias saw not just sorrow, but defiance. "This is what it means to be human," she said. "To endure, to fight, to remember even when the stars themselves forget." And as the ceiling cracked open above them, revealing the burning sky, Elias realized he was no longer afraid. He was standing on the edge of something far greater than himself. A truth buried beneath centuries of silence, waiting to be reborn. The roar above them became deafening as the mountain itself seemed to shudder under the assault. Chunks of stone broke loose and fell around them, crashing into the glowing floor, but the pillar of light stood untouched. Elias could feel its pulse now, not just through his feet but through his chest, vibrating with the rhythm of his heartbeat, or maybe his heartbeat was matching its rhythm. Alara's eyes glowed brighter as she placed both hands against the surface of the crystal, and arcs of blue energy spread outward like veins of light racing through the cavern walls. "It's trying to speak," she said, her voice trembling. "It's been asleep for so long." Elias took a cautious step closer, shielding his face from the brightness. "Then wake it," he shouted, "before they tear this place apart." She turned to him with a look of both awe and sorrow. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It doesn't speak in words. It speaks through memory, through emotion, through every living thing connected to it. If I open the vault fully, it won't just awaken. It will remember everything." Before he could ask what that meant, the cave ceiling cracked open with a thunderous boom, and daylight flooded in through the storm. Council enforcement ships hovered above, their silhouettes blotting out the sky. From their hulls descended armored drones, each one shaped like a man but built of chrome and fury. They landed at the edge of the cavern, their glowing visors sweeping across the space until they locked onto Alara. "By order of the Galactic Council," a voice boomed through the comm speakers, cold and mechanical. "You are under arrest for violation of containment protocols. Stand down or be neutralized." Elias stepped in front of her instinctively. "Wait," he shouted, his voice echoing. "You don't understand what this place is." The drones advanced, weapons humming, the air vibrating with heat. "We understand perfectly," the voice replied. "Nerith 4 is an anomaly, a planetary infection that threatens galactic stability. Containment will be enforced." Alara's expression hardened, her sorrow replaced by something fierce and ancient. "They call life an infection," she murmured. "They always have." She raised one hand, and the air rippled around her like a mirage. The drones fired simultaneously, beams of white energy cutting through the air, but each shot curved away at the last instant, bending like light through water. The deflected blasts hit the cavern walls, melting stone into rivers of glass. Elias stumbled back, his ears ringing. "Alara, stop!" he shouted. But she didn't. The glow around her body intensified, her outline blurring as if her very form was dissolving into light. The drones charged again, but this time the pillar answered her. Its hum became a roar, the ground splitting open as streams of liquid light surged upward, tearing through the cavern and coiling like serpents of energy. The drones were lifted into the air, their metal frames warping, melting, and then shattering into dust. "It remembers," she whispered, her voice both hers and something else's, layered and vast. "It remembers what humanity was before the council chained it." Elias could hardly stand from the force of it. Every hair on his body stood on end as the entire cavern blazed with light. Through the glow he saw visions, fleeting, powerful, unstoppable. Humans standing on alien worlds, united and proud, their ships stretching across the stars before fear and bureaucracy turned them into servants of the council. He saw worlds silenced, libraries burned, and truths rewritten. He saw the rise of the council, cold, ordered, terrified of what they couldn't control. And at the center of it all, he saw her Alara, standing before them as both witness and weapon, trying to protect the last fragment of what humanity had left: hope. When the visions faded, he fell to his knees, gasping. Alara turned toward him, her form flickering, the edges of her body dissolving into streaks of blue. "It's too much," she said weakly. "It's been waiting so long to be heard." Elias crawled to her, his hands trembling. "You have to stop before it kills you," he said, but she only smiled. "It can't kill me," she said softly. "It is me." Above them, the remaining ships opened fire. Columns of energy rained down into the cavern, shaking the earth, vaporizing stone and soil. Elias threw himself over her, shielding her with his body even though he knew it was useless. The light from the pillar exploded upward, meeting the blasts midair and scattering them like ash in the wind. "They'll never stop," Elias said. "They'll destroy this world if they have to." Alara's fading hand brushed his cheek. "Then let them see what they've buried," she whispered. She pressed her other hand against the floor, and the ground split open, revealing a network of glowing lines spreading outward like veins beneath the planet's skin. A low, deep hum filled the air, the same hum he'd felt since the storm began, only now it was everywhere. The planet itself was waking up. The light spread across the valley, through the mountains, into the oceans and sky. Every drop of rain, every gust of wind shimmered with the same energy. The council ships faltered in the air, their engines sputtering. "What's happening?" one of the pilots shouted over the comms, panic creeping into the metallic voice. "The atmosphere, it's destabilizing." From the heart of the storm, a massive surge of light erupted, engulfing the ships in brilliance. Elias turned his face away, his eyes burning, but Alara stood tall in the center of it, her voice echoing through the storm. "You can't cage memory," she said. "You can't erase what humanity built." Her words rippled through the air like thunder. The ships tried to flee, but the energy held them, suspending them midair before their metal frames began to melt away, disintegrating into streaks of light that spiraled upward into the clouds. The storm reached its peak, the rain turning to pure radiance. Elias watched, awe and terror warring within him. "What have you done?" he asked. Alara looked back at him with tears in her eyes. "I've reminded them," she said. "Reminded the galaxy what it tried to forget." Her body flickered again, fragments of light drifting away like dust in sunlight. "This world is awake now. It will remember you, too." When the light finally dimmed, the rain stopped. The sky above was no longer gray but a deep, endless blue streaked with silver. The ground beneath Elias glowed faintly, veins of light fading slowly into stillness. The ships were gone, reduced to ash that sparkled faintly as it settled over the valley like snow. Alara stood in the center of it all, her form almost transparent now, her voice a whisper carried by the wind. "You should leave, Elias," she said softly. "The council will come again, and next time, they won't underestimate what they've lost." He shook his head. "I can't leave you here." She smiled faintly, her expression filled with something beyond sorrow, something like peace. "I'll always be here," she said. "As long as it rains, I'll be part of this world." Her fingers brushed his hand one last time, and he felt warmth spread through his chest, a heartbeat that wasn't his own. "Tell them," she whispered. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them that humanity's memory is alive." And then she was gone. Her body dissolved into 1,000 shimmering motes that floated upward and vanished into the sunlight. The pillar behind her dimmed, its pulse slowing, settling into silence. Elias fell to his knees, surrounded by the faint glow of what had been. For the first time since he arrived on Nerith, the air felt alive. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and something else, something human. He looked up at the sky, at the drifting light that lingered like a ghost, and whispered, "I will." The storm clouds cleared completely, revealing the first full sunrise the planet had seen in centuries. The light touched the wet soil, and as it did, something miraculous happened. Green. Tiny shoots of grass began to sprout from the cracks, glistening under the dew. The world was alive again. Elias stood slowly, the sound of his heartbeat echoing in his ears like the planet's pulse answering his own. He turned toward the horizon, where the last of the council ships vanished into the distance, and he knew what he had to do. He would go back. He would tell them. He would make the galaxy remember. The sun climbed slowly over the horizon, spilling light across the drenched valley that only hours ago had been a battlefield of storm and fire. The world of Nerith, once thought lifeless, shimmered in the aftermath like a living dream. The soil steamed with warmth, and faint ripples of light pulsed beneath the surface, as though the planet itself was breathing again. Elias stood there for a long time, motionless, his heart still thundering in disbelief at what he had witnessed. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and wet earth, a smell no human had ever described in the archives of this forgotten world. Above him, the sky had cleared completely, blue and calm, streaked with wisps of golden clouds that caught the sun like strands of silk. It was hard to believe that moments ago, this place had been under siege by the Council's most powerful ships. Harder still to believe that a single woman, or whatever she truly was, had stood against them and won. Elias looked down at the space where Ilara had stood. Only faint trails of light remained, glowing softly on the ground like the imprint of a vanished star. The silence was almost sacred. He knelt, running his hand over the glowing soil, and felt a faint pulse answer his touch. A slow, rhythmic echo like a heartbeat deep beneath the surface. The world was alive, and through that pulse, he could almost hear her voice again, soft and distant. "Tell them what you saw." He closed his eyes, letting the wind brush over him, and for a brief moment, he felt her presence, warm, steady, infinite, woven into the air around him. When he opened his eyes, he knew what he had to do. The truth about Nerith, couldn't stay buried. Humanity deserved to remember what it once was. He packed what little equipment he had left, salvaging the datapad that somehow survived the energy surge. Its screen flickered weakly, displaying fragmented readings, unfathomable energy signatures, radiation levels that defied explanation, and atmospheric readings showing oxygen density far beyond baseline. The planet wasn't dying anymore. It was healing. He saved the data under one word, Ilara. Then he began the long walk back toward his shuttle. The climb up the ravine was steep and slick with mud, but the rain had washed away the ash, leaving only shimmering minerals that caught the sunlight. It was strange. The air no longer carried the heavy silence of an abandoned world. Birds, or something like them, called faintly in the distance. The hum of the planet had softened into a peaceful vibration, a song that followed him as he walked. By the time he reached the ridge overlooking the valley, he saw the full scale of what had changed. The land that had once been cracked and dead now glowed with life. Streams of clear water flowed down from the mountains where the rain had pooled, carving new rivers into the soil. Patches of green spread like veins across the plains, and for the first time in centuries, the wind carried the sound of movement. Leaves rustling, water running, life returning. He felt tears sting his eyes as he realized what he was witnessing. The rebirth of a world thought lost forever. The voice of the council had been loud enough to silence history, but even they couldn't silence the planet's memory. The truth had survived, buried in soil and storm until a single human had listened. He was overwhelmed not by fear, but by awe. Humanity had done terrible things, yes, but it had also built wonders beyond imagination. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, under all the arrogance and control, that same fire still burned. When he reached his shuttle, he found it partially buried under debris, its hull scorched by energy fire, its navigation lights blinking weakly. The comm systems were fried and the fuel cells were nearly drained, but the emergency drive still held a charge, just enough to reach orbit. As he stepped inside, the cold metallic air of the cabin felt alien after the warmth of the world outside. He sat in the pilot's seat, hands trembling slightly as he powered the systems. The screens flickered to life one by one, their dull glow illuminating his face. The AI system's voice crackled faintly, damaged but functional. System diagnostics incomplete. Emergency transmission pending. Awaiting command. Elias hesitated, his gaze drifting to the viewport where the planet's surface shimmered under the sunlight. He thought of Alara, of her words, of the moment she had stood between destruction and rebirth. Then he leaned forward and began recording. This is Dr. Elias Ward, Expedition Leader for the Nerith 4 Atmospheric Restoration Project. To any listening station, this is not a distress call. This is a warning and a revelation. The Galactic Council lied. Nerith 4 is not dead. It was never dead. It was silenced. And now it's awake. He paused, staring at the recording light blinking red. I've seen things no human was ever meant to see. The planet remembers us. It remembers humanity. And it remembers what the Council did. If anyone hears this, know that we are more than what they've made us believe. We are not the Council's subjects. We are their history, and history doesn't die. His voice shook slightly, but his eyes were steady. He sent the message on every frequency he could access, routing it through deep band channels used for archaeological transmissions. The AI confirmed the transmission, but he knew the Council would intercept it. That was the point. Let them try to erase it again. Let them try to silence a voice that now lived in the pulse of a planet. As the engines hummed to life, Elias lifted off from the valley floor, the shuttle rising slowly into the air. Through the cockpit glass, he could see the world below him, lush, alive, shimmering like an emerald in the light. He whispered a quiet goodbye to the surface, half expecting to see her standing there, watching him go. But there was only wind and light and the faint glimmer of rain that refused to fade. The shuttle broke through the clouds and entered the upper atmosphere, where the blue turned to black and the stars stretched endlessly beyond. The ship's sensors flickered as it passed through the shimmering layer of energy that now surrounded the planet like a halo. The instruments went wild, gravity fluctuations, magnetic distortions, frequencies no system could translate. And then, as if sensing his presence, the static cleared, and he heard it faintly. A whisper through the comms, soft and distant, but unmistakably human. You listened. Elias froze, breath catching in his throat. Alara? He whispered. There was no answer, only silence, but he smiled faintly nonetheless. Maybe it was just the planet. Maybe it was her. Maybe it didn't matter. Humanity had forgotten what it meant to listen, to the stars, to themselves, to the worlds they'd conquered. But not him. He had heard, and now so would everyone else. He turned his gaze toward the darkness of space, where the Council's fleet awaited, and for the first time in his life, he felt no fear. They could strip his credentials, erase his records, silence his name, but they couldn't silence the truth that now pulsed within the living heart of a reborn world. Hours later, as his ship entered the outer orbital lanes, his transmission reached its first destination, a mining relay station on the edge of Council territory. Within minutes, the message began to spread. Across colonies and starports, research networks, and underground channels, people heard his words. Some dismissed them as madness. Others felt something stir deep within their hearts, a memory too faint to name, a feeling of rain, of earth, of freedom. On a dozen forgotten worlds, people looked up at their dry skies and whispered, "Maybe it's true." The idea spread faster than the council could contain it, igniting sparks in places where rebellion had long gone cold. Humanity was remembering itself, one whisper at a time. As his ship drifted toward the stars, Elias closed his eyes and thought again of that night. The rain against the tent, the glow in her eyes, the way she said rain doesn't exist where I'm from, with wonder and sorrow all at once. He could still feel her hand on his chest, the warmth of her touch, the quiet promise in her voice. The galaxy might never know her name, but her legacy would echo in every storm, every world that dared to awaken again. Somewhere far behind him, Nerith turned slowly in the light of its sun, alive and eternal. And as the stars stretched endlessly ahead, Elias whispered one final promise into the void. "I'll make them remember you." The darkness of space surrounded him like a silent ocean, endless and alive. As his shuttle drifted beyond Nerith 4's orbit, Elias watched the planet shrink into a distant sphere of blue and gold, its atmosphere glowing faintly with the same soft light that had filled the caverns beneath its surface. He could still feel it, the hum, the pulse, the faint rhythm that matched his heartbeat. It was as if the planet itself refused to let him go, whispering across the void through frequencies only the soul could hear. The ship's engines rumbled softly, carrying him toward the border of Council territory, where patrols were known to monitor all transmissions. He knew the message he had sent would not go unnoticed. It was already spreading across the communication grid, fragmenting, replicating, embedding itself in data archives the Council could never fully erase. The truth was out, and for the first time in his life, Elias felt both terrified and free. In the cockpit's reflection, he could see the exhaustion in his face. Dark circles beneath his eyes, streaks of dirt still clinging to his skin. He hadn't slept in nearly 2 days, but his mind was too alive, too full of light and questions to rest. The ship's AI spoke softly through the static. "Incoming transmission detected. Encrypted Council frequency." His heart jumped. He hesitated before responding. "Open channel." The screen flickered, and the image of a stern, familiar face appeared. A council marshal with steel-gray eyes and a voice as sharp as the hull of a warship. "Dr. Ward," the marshal began, his tone calm but heavy with authority. "We've received your transmission. You are to power down your vessel immediately and surrender to the nearest patrol craft. You are charged with violation of restricted planetary zones, dissemination of unauthorized data, and potential collaboration with a classified insurgent." Elias didn't answer right away. He simply stared at the man's face, realizing that even now, even after everything he'd seen, the Council still believed they could control the story. "You mean Alara," Elias said quietly. "You call her an insurgent. I call her what's left of our conscience." The marshal's expression darkened. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Doctor," he said. "That planet is not what you think. It's a corruption, a sentient echo of pre-Council humanity. If it continues to awaken, it could destabilize the network that binds the core worlds together. You've endangered billions." Elias leaned forward, his voice low but unshaken. "You talk about stability like it's sacred," he said, "but all you've built is silence. You erased our past, our power, our wonder, and you call it peace." The marshal's composure cracked, a flash of anger crossing his face. "You're meddling with forces beyond your comprehension," he warned. "That world was sealed for a reason." Elias met his gaze with quiet defiance. "You sealed it because it remembered who we were." The connection cut abruptly, leaving the cockpit in silence once more. Elias exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the glass. The stars outside seemed brighter now, as if the universe itself had been listening. Hours passed as the shuttle moved steadily through the void. He replayed fragments of his conversation with Alara in his mind, the way her voice trembled when she spoke of her world, the way her eyes burned with both sorrow and hope. The more he thought about her, the more he realized how much she embodied everything the Council had tried to destroy. She wasn't just a survivor of their suppression. She was proof that humanity's soul still existed, buried deep beneath centuries of control and fear. The thought made his chest ache. He knew she was gone, yet her presence lingered in every flicker of light on his screens, every vibration of the ship's hull, every whisper of static in the comms. She had become part of something larger, woven into the very fabric of the galaxy she died to protect. When the patrol ships finally appeared on his sensors, Elias was ready. Two sleek Council cruisers emerged from the shadows of space, their lights blinking cold and blue. The comms crackled again. Unidentified vessel, power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Failure to comply will result in immediate termination. Elias took a deep breath. He could see his reflection in the control panel, the face of a man who had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. "No," he said softly to himself. "Not this time." Instead of surrendering, he accessed the emergency channel on his console, routing his earlier broadcast into the Council fleet's encrypted frequency. The message replayed in his own voice, echoing across their systems. The Galactic Council lied. Nerith 4 is not dead, it was silenced. And now it's awake. The cruisers hesitated, their engines flickering. He smiled grimly. "You wanted the truth," he murmured. "Now you'll have to hear it." The lead ship locked weapons on his shuttle, but before the order to fire could be given, the stars around them began to distort. At first it looked like a ripple in space, but then Elias realized it wasn't distortion. It was light. A faint, golden shimmer spread across the blackness, expanding outward like the reflection of sunlight on water. The cruiser's systems glitched, their hulls illuminated by waves of pulsing energy that made their shadows vanish. Elias's comms erupted with panic chatter. "What is that?" one voice cried. "Unknown anomaly approaching," another shouted. But Elias knew. He could feel it in his bones. The pulse. The same heartbeat he had felt beneath the soil of Nerith 4. The planet had awakened something greater, something that could reach across the void. Through the trembling glass of the viewport, he saw it manifest. A vast, ethereal network of light spreading between the stars, connecting systems, worlds, and hearts in one luminous web. It wasn't a weapon. It was memory itself, alive and reaching. The Council ships tried to retreat, but their engines stalled as the waves of light passed through them. Elias could hear the AI's voice struggling to process what was happening. Gravitational fields destabilizing. Quantum interference detected. Unknown energy signatures consistent with human neural patterns. He smiled through tears. "It's her," he whispered. "She's showing them." Outside, the stars flared brighter, each one pulsing in time with the rhythm of the planet he had left behind. Images filled his mind again. Cities rising from ashes, laughter echoing in domes beneath alien skies, rain falling on worlds that hadn't seen it in millennia. Humanity was remembering. The galaxy was remembering. The network that the Council used to control was now filled with something new, something alive and free. Elias felt his ship begin to tremble as the light enveloped it completely. For a moment, he feared it would tear him apart, but then he felt warmth, a deep, endless calm that spread through every nerve, every thought. He closed his eyes and heard her voice one last time, soft and clear, as if she were sitting beside him. "You listened. Now they will too." He smiled, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I did, Elara," he whispered. "I always will." The ship's systems flickered one final time before going dark, carried along by the wave of light as it swept through the stars. The Council cruisers vanished in silence, their cold armor stripped away by the radiance of something older, purer, and more human than they could ever comprehend. When the light finally faded, Nerith, for shone like a jewel in the distance, its surface alive with storms of gold and silver. The records would say that Elias Ward's shuttle was lost in deep space, his last transmission corrupted by solar interference. But across the galaxy, fragments of his voice continued to echo, on data streams, in calm chatter, in dreams. And on dozens of forgotten worlds, it began to rain again for the first time in centuries. Farmers stood under the falling water, eyes lifted toward the sky, whispering his words like a prayer. Humanity remembers. Far below on Nerith 4, the winds moved gently through fields of new green, carrying a faint hum beneath their song. In the heart of the world, where the crystal pillars still glowed, two shapes of light flickered side by side before merging into one. The planet's pulse deepened, strong and eternal. Somewhere in that light, a voice whispered through the soil and sky, "We are still here. Thank you for listening." If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic HFY sci-fi tales that remind us why humanity's spirit, no matter how far it drifts, will always find its way home.